A great sight reader can learn a piece in 3 days. A bad sight reader needs 3 months to do the same thing. So how do you get good at sight reading so you can save yourself all this time and energy from learning pieces? Hi, I'm Jazer. In this video, I want to share with you 5 common pitfalls of piano sight reading. These are all mistakes that I've made throughout my life, so I'm hoping that by sharing this with you, you won't make these errors so you can save yourself all this painful struggles of learning a piece. Before we get into the 5 pitfalls, make sure you like and subscribe to this channel so you stay in touch with these free piano lessons and tutorials. Pitfall number 5 is not reading enough. Sight reading is not actually sight reading. Let me explain what I mean. As someone who's played piano for 18 years and have read through thousands of pieces, what I can tell you is sight reading is not actually playing through random notes on a page, but rather it is a test of your experience with things like chord shapes and melody lines and key signatures. To put it simply, sight reading is all about your experience in music. When you're a great sight reader, it means you have seen and analyzed a lot of music. When you are a poor sight reader, it means you haven't done those things. Have you ever had the experience of, for example, playing a certain chord or something in a piece and thinking, whoa, this is the same thing that happened in the other piece. And because I have played it before, I can easily do it in this piece. So great sight reading is basically this, but for not just that chord shape, but everything in music. Let's go to an example now. So before I created this video, I just looked at this piece for about 5 minutes. So technically right now as I'm playing it, it's not technically sight reading, but I still want to do this so I can take you through what's going through my head as I'm looking through at something that is relatively new to me. So I was talking about chord shapes before. For example, if you look at this left hand is just doing this. Now, for beginners and people who are starting to learn piano, they might see this part as, oh, that's a G, and that's a B, and that's a D. That's the way they analyze it. There are 3 separate notes. But for me, I have played this pattern in so many pieces that it just feels like maybe a gardener doing some pruning in the garden. It's a very usual part of my toolkit. This is why I always recommend students to read lots of music, because when you read lots of music, you're building your toolkit, you're building your tool set. So when you read each new piece of music, you are able to use your previous experience to help guide you to play each new piece better. Read lots of music. Pitfall number 4 is to sight read pieces that are way too hard. Now you want to make sure when you're practicing sight reading, you're practicing pieces at a level where you can feel some success in. What does success mean? Success means you can play through about 80% without much stopping. For example, if you're sight reading a piece and you're stopping every 2 seconds, then I think for now that piece is just a little bit out of reach. Sight read something a little simpler for now. Let's say you're in ABRSM grade 4 piano. I don't think you should sight read grade 4 piano pieces. You should sight read maybe grade 1 or 2 pieces. There are 2 reasons why I think you should sight read simpler pieces. The first is that you'll feel more success, so you'll feel more encouraged when you sight read. And the second thing is something not a lot of people talk about, but it's actually that you will actually learn something from the process. You'll learn something about chord shapes or something about key signatures. It's much better to do that than to sight read something that's completely hard and fumble your way through it, and then by the end of it, not really sure what you got out of that experience. Pitfall number 3 is stopping or restarting the music to fix notes. Now, there are 2 ways to sight read. The first way is with stops, and the second way is without stops. Most people will do it the first way. So they'll do something like this. Now, I have huge empathy for why people do this the first way. The reason people want to stop and restart the music is because they feel they need to play correctly, right? So it's much better to go back and relearn that correctly. Now, even though from that perspective, that has good benefits because you want to learn it correctly, right? I think students need to do a lot more of the second one, which is to try to sight read where they're not stopping the music. And this is not easy to do, but you should try to do this second way and just learn how to be okay with mistakes as well. For example, okay, so I purposely made some mistakes there, but the point of this is you want to try to also build into your skill set this way of playing music and not stopping at all. It will shed a lot of light on what you need to work on, and it will also really improve your skill in sight reading. It's not easy to do this one, but you must try to maybe even imagine someone has a gun to your head or something. At all costs, you simply must move forward. A side note about this one, a really easy way to practice not stopping when you're sight reading is to use a metronome. So you can use a traditional metronome like this one, but let's say you find the sound of the metronome really annoying. A product that recently I bought that I can't recommend enough is a Soundbrenner metronome watch. So instead of hearing that clicking, I have the vibrations on my wrist. Very, very useful for improving sight reading. Soundbrenner is currently doing a deal. If you use the code Jazer20, you get 20% off your watch. Pitfall number 2 is fingers flying away from the keyboard. This is something I've talked about in this channel various times, but I think it's very important for pianists to learn how to play legato and to learn how to connect each note to the next note. So in this piece, let's look at, for example, bar 4. This part here, this joining part of this in the left hand, I think a lot of beginners will do something like this. They would fly up, try to strike the C from up here. Whereas what I recommend you do is to keep your fingers low. Okay, see, when you're playing this D here, you can use this D note as a reference for the next note, which is your C. That's much better. That's much better than... Okay, when you fly off the keyboard, you have to find your position again. Whereas if you stay close to the keyboard, you can use each note as the reference for the next note. This is a really important high-level concept that I think can really help you in sight reading, and that is to think about each note as a reference point to the next note. Whenever you strike a note successfully, that's really great, but use that note as well to feel where the next note is. And then when you strike the next note, then use that note to feel where that next note is. This is why I always advocate staying close to the keyboard. That way you can feel where everything is instead of having to find it from this kind of action. Moving on to our final sight reading pitfall number 1, and that is not reading ahead. Now let's talk about how sight reading actually works. You got to look on the page, find the notes, and when you find the note, your brain has to go, oh, that's a D. And once you figure out that's a D, then you have to look for where D is on the piano before you strike it. And then you have to think about what fingers to use. That's a lot of process, and your brain needs time to do all this stuff. So how do you even keep up with the music? The only realistic way to sight read a piece successfully is to always read ahead. So a really simple example is something like, look ahead, look ahead, look ahead, look ahead. So you have a half note here. When you're playing that D up here, your brain shouldn't be going, oh, it's time to rest. Your brain should be going, what are the next right hand notes? Okay, you have a B and D, so. Always looking ahead, looking ahead, look ahead, look ahead, look ahead, look ahead, look ahead. It's a very interesting experience where you sort of feel like you're in a time machine. You're always living ahead and the music is always behind you. So try and think about this one. Always be just one step ahead so that you're always prepared to play the right notes. A bonus tip for this one is to try to do things very slowly so you have more time to process each note and to play on time. That's all for this video. Make sure to sight read lots of pieces to build your toolkit. Which of these sight reading pitfalls could you relate to the most? Let me know in the comments below. Have a great day. Go and get some practice done. See you in the next one.